Too Much Information is a production of iHeart.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Too Much Information, the show that brings you the secret histories and little-known facts behind your favorite movies, music, TV shows, and more. We are your gurus of game shows, your wizards of wordplay, your Vanna Whites of vowel movement, spinning our wheels until we land on bankrupt. My name is Jordan Runtagh.
And I'm Alex Heigl.
And today we are talking about a little show you might have heard of called, say it with me now, Wheel
Price of
Fortune.
Jeopardy.
That's not the bit.
Oh,
I should have had my air horn. I gotta have my air horn app up. Look at this studio filled with glamorous merchandise, fabulous and exciting bonus prizes, thousands of dollars in cash, over $150,000 just waiting to be won as we present our big bonanza of cash on Wheel of Fortune. Rain Man. That's what he does in Rain Man.
Yeah, no, I know.
I mean, what can you say about Wheel of Fortune? It's the game show to end all game shows. The Price is Right comes close in terms of being a chaotic blur of colors and lights and audience participation. But the thing about The Price is Right is that it's a constant stream of smaller games. It's like a televisual midway. It doesn't have the same sense of ritual that a show like Wheel of Fortune has. Wheel of Fortune, it's the fun-loving sibling of the show that it's always compared to, Jeopardy, the more restrained sister show, which shares a creator, a studio, and a production company, by the way. Jeopardy, that's a show to aspire to, but Wheel of Fortune is a show for everyone. It doesn't require you to do pesky things like know stuff. If you know the alphabet and you can read, you're pretty much good to go. Although, I gotta say, I absolutely suck at word games, so I think I would probably bomb on Wheel of Fortune. I'm much better at knowing useless crap. For 26 years, Wheel, as those in the know call it, it's like how Studio 54 is just called Studio by those who are like close to it. Wheel of Fortune aficionados just call it Wheel. Wheel was the highest rated show in all of syndication, held that record for 26 years, averaging 30 million viewers each week, until its record was bested in 2010 by Two and a Half Men. Wheel of Fortune is the longest running syndicated game show in the United States, with 8,000 episodes taped and aired as of June 7th, 2024. That's almost as many as we have.
Really?
No, we're not closing in on 8,000.
It feels like it, doesn't it?
A little bit. But it was the end of an era recently as Pat Sajak said goodbye after more than 42 years at the helm of Wheel of Fortune. He was at the wheel of Wheel. Hold for applause.
No.
Oh, okay. In 2019, Pat Sajak was recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records for having the longest-serving career as a game show host of the same show than anyone, surpassing the previous record holder, Bob Barker, for The Price is Right. And now Wheel of Fortune's being handed off to Ryan Seacrest, a man who is kind of the go-to replacement for retired white men of broadcasting. He stepped in for Dick Clark on his New Year's Eve TV special, Regis Philbin on Regis and Kelly, and Casey Kasem for American Top 40. And now Pat Sajak. It's kind of a wonder he didn't end up with Jeopardy, too. I'm sure Wheel of Fortune will be totally passable with Ryan Seacrest, in the same way that Jeopardy's fine with Ken Jennings, but in honor of the change, this seemed like a fine time to pay tribute to this titan of the televisual realm. Heigl, what are your thoughts on Wheel? I can imagine they're the same as Gilligan's Island. None. Do I have that
Nailed
right?
it.
Yep. Okay.
Nailed it. Yeah, no, I mean, my parents were like comedy and sitcom people. Like, it was the 2 episodes of The Simpsons that air back to back right after I finished my homework, and then something like Free Time, and then like NBC Thursday Night with Will and Grace.
I thought you were going to say Free Jazz.
Yes, then we had the family free jazz. We gathered around the old radio, and influenced by Coltrane and Albert Ayler, we'd all get out our horns and make terrible sounds. And I say that as a fan of free jazz. Yeah, I don't know, man. I just don't. I never really. The first game show, and this strikes a personal chord with you. The first game show I really was appointment viewing for me was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Oh yeah, of course.
That's it. None of the other ones really ever. Now I'm into Jeopardy because I just sit there and spit out the answers and get furious. But like,
what do you get furious about? That you're not there, or that other people don't know them?
Both. Well, I guess Yeah, I mean, because you and another coworker of mine, Lindsay, former coworker of mine, Lindsay Kupfer, over at Page Six at the New York Post, she was like, has like a similar obsession with Jeopardy as you do, and she was like telling me about the phone thing and like how difficult it is to get
Oh, it's impossible.
like past that. Yeah, and so I was like, well, no, but I can sit here and get mad at the dummies who did get past it. No, I mean, I was like a huge trivia buff. I was on the Quiz Bowl team in middle school, and like we did fairly well. I just can't do math, and I don't care about sports, so those are my weak points.
Yeah.
And I don't think math should be involved, honestly. That feels like an ethics violation.
Of trivia?
Yeah. Or like, I don't know. Can we call that classist?
You just kind of say that about word games too, though. Like illiteracy.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm comfortable tarring them all with the same brush.
How are you at word games?
Like scrambles?
Yeah, I mean,
And,
Wheel
like,
of Fortune stuff. How do you think you would do?
Not well.
No.
I mean, maybe. I don't know, dude. Give me an example of the question. Like, hit me.
Are you familiar with the basic premise of Wheel of Fortune?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Sorry. Yes, I am now. Actually, no, I'm bad at the fill in the blanks thing.
Yeah. No, I am too. Well, that's the reputation. Was that like, oh, yeah, all the people that weren't smart enough to get on Jeopardy go on Wheel of Fortune? Not true. It's tough. It's tough in a different way.
Did you see that the Hawk Tuah girl got signed with an agent?
I didn't know what Hawk Tuah was, and then I Googled it, and then I read a sentence or two, and I realized I didn't want to know. Can you explain to the listeners and to me what Hawk Tuah is?
No, it's just this girl from the South. She was just interviewed on one of those talking head TikTok shows, and her preferred sex move, she said, is the Hawk Tuah. She spits on that.
How did we get here? How did this
talking about people getting famous or getting on TV for like having no discernible skills.
Oh, yeah. But enough about Vanna White.
Oh,
I love Vanna White. I love Vanna White.
It's so funny because like she was just like I don't know what your sense of women was in like your early childhood. I mean, like, but I just like knew her name is shorthand for glamour.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. No, you're right.
Not even like sexual, just like evening gown glamour.
Yeah,
like Vanna White. Just like that was like like a Zsa Zsa Gabor figure.
The name was so glamorous too. Yeah, I always thought that was like a fake name, but I don't think it is.
Yeah, that was about it.
Well, I have a soft spot for Wheel of Fortune because it was quite literally a formative memory. I was really into like multicolored things as a baby, so I was just mesmerized by the titular wheel on Wheel of Fortune, all the colors going round and round. And back in the 80s, the color palette of Wheel of Fortune was really fun. They had this red, blue, and yellow color scheme with these big sun shapes over each contestant. It almost looked like a Teletubbies thing. It was just very vibrant and bright and something that I could imagine appealing to a lot of babies, and I was one of them. I just thought it looked so cool. And I loved game shows in general because they were just these bright, shiny, colorful, musical, fun events. I mean, I liked jukeboxes for the same reason. They were, again, bright, colorful things with music that just existed purely for fun. I thought that was so cool. Gumball machines was another one. A machine that dispensed colorful candy. I just thought it was crazy that these things existed. As like a little kid, I thought that like machines were supposed to be very functional, and all of a sudden you had these fun things that dispensed music and candy, and that's kind of how I felt about game shows too. So Wheel of Fortune, it made a big impression on me, and was I would go as far as to say it was appointment viewing. And Sesame Street also did a bit around this time called Squeal of Fortune. Do you remember this?
No.
Oh, it was one of the more surreal bits on Sesame Street. And even as like a toddler, I remember thinking it was weird. They had the Pat Sajak knockoff Muppet. And the goal was for contestants to guess how many times a pig in the center of a wheel would squeal before the wheel stopped.
I think that's an actual game they play in Alabama.
I also had this game as a kid. Do you remember this called Mr. Game Show?
Nope.
Do you remember this? It was just like weirdly advanced for the late 80s, early 90s animatronic game show host. He was like this animatronic robot that sat on a little pedestal, and his name was Gus Glitz. And he spoke. He moved around and he spoke, and he had the goofy game show voice, and he made bad jokes. Whenever you get a question wrong, he'd be like, dig a hole and crawl in. Like... Yeah, he had an edge to him. So anyway, all this stuff, Wheel of Fortune, Mr. Game Show, all this stuff sparked a love of kitsch and broadcasting. And so it's probably not a huge surprise to you or to anyone listening that I always nursed a not so secret desire to be a game show host. Anyway, I assume that you have no deep primal thoughts about Wheel of Fortune like I do.
No. I really don't. I'm so sorry, man. I know you love game shows, but I don't. I couldn't be
Arsed.
I don't know. Yeah, I couldn't be arsed.
I mean, no. I feel like that's an appropriate level of interest and involvement with Wheel of Fortune. I think you're okay.
Okay, thank God.
Well, let's dive in. From Pat Sajak's surprisingly storied background in Vietnam to Vanna White's hilarious Guinness record, her hilarious run-in with Nelly, the show's biggest fails, and everything that goes into that big honkin' wheel. Here's everything you didn't know about Wheel of Fortune.
Millionaire. Weakest link.
That just sucked. I hated that. That's that one. I can't get behind that one.
I just thought the British lady was so funny.
Oh, you would. I thought she was mean. She stressed me
That's
out.
the point. That's what I loved about it. She was such against the grain of any host. I was like, ooh, finally, mean person representation.
But she wasn't mean in like a funny way like Simon Cowell. She was just mean.
Yeah. We don't have to be funny all the time. That's like saying I thought you people were jolly.
Wow. Okay. I feel chastened. Like so many, Wheel of Fortune was conceived in the back of a car. Nothing? I was really proud of that opening.
I'm sorry. I'll be more engaged.
The show was the brainchild of Merv Griffin, the same man behind Jeopardy! And he was also a talk show titan in this era, with his chat show running from 1962 to 1986. And he was also a former pop singer in the 50s. So all in all, this was a whole-brained man. Jeopardy! Had been a hit throughout the 60s, but by the early 70s, it was starting to run out of steam, and it would be canceled by 1975, before being revived as the version we know and love today. So all this to say, by the early 70s, Merv wanted a new game show idea, and he cast his mind back to his childhood, when he would pass the time on long car trips by playing hangman with his sister. While discussing this idea with his staff, they decided to add a twist to the whole hangman premise, a roulette-style wheel. This was based on Griffin always being attracted to such wheels as a child when he saw them in casinos. I could relate to this. See, there's something very primal about this show.
Flashing lights?
Flashing lights and colorful wheels, and yeah, it's exciting.
I mean, it's funny that they picked like the two simplest concepts from
Yeah.
like the carnival age, you know, to be like, no, we can build something around this.
Well, Heigl, why reinvent the wheel?
Ooh, there it is. How many times is that going to pop up?
None.
Oh, okay.
I love this. Merv and high-ranking members of his staff actually consulted an executive at Caesar's Palace to find out how to build the Wheel of Fortune wheel. Which is, I'm sure there's more to it than I'm thinking, but also it's a wheel with spokes on it that hit a thing that make noise. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
for
sure.
sure.
I'm sure there's more to it. Merv was truly the guiding hand behind this show throughout its infancy, serving as executive producer until the year 2000. And just as he did for Jeopardy! He wrote the longtime theme to Wheel of Fortune. Unlike Jeopardy! I have next to no memory of the Wheel of Fortune theme, and if you put a gun to my head, I couldn't hum it. But it was apparently called Changing Keys, and it remained in place until Merv stepped down in 2000, at which point they changed the song on him. And I call some kind of corporate studio shenanigans on this, because Merv, who wrote the Jeopardy! Theme, famously earned somewhere in the ballpark of $100 million in royalties for the Jeopardy! Theme song alone, which you'll recall he wrote on Marlon Brando's old piano from our Jeopardy! Episode. So I'm choosing to view the Wheel of Fortune theme change as a personal affront to old Merv after he retired as the executive producer. That's the only reason I could think of, because I didn't want to have to pay him a huge chunk every time the show aired.
Does it change keys?
That I don't know. It must.
That's just a piano bit?
It's like a big band song.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But
because Merv, again, he was a big band singer, so I think it's like part of his background. They used the new song called Happy Wheels from 2000 until 2017, and then they created another untitled piece of music in 2017, but then finally in 2021, they returned to Merv's original Changing Keys theme, and all was right in the world. A musician, a singer, a composer, created Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune, and I'm sure he created other shows too, and hosted a beloved talk show for over 20 years.
As you described him, a whole-brained man.
Yes.
It does in fact change keys.
Okay, see? And you know what my favorite...
No, shut up. I want to hear how they do this. That's pretty impressive, actually. That's like actual modulation. That's not just like a truck changer thing.
This is the most engaged I've ever seen you. This is the damn Wheel of Fortune theme.
I mean, I'm entranced, you know. This is because he's doing like actual jazz changes in this. He's not doing the classic truck driver where you just hop it up a whole step like every lazy hack in the world learned from Diane Warren or whomever. Like, this is like actual modulation. And he goes from, see if I remember my theory. He goes from D flat to C natural for the B section, and then changes a third time to A. That's smooth. Oh, and then it changes keys like every section, actually. No shit. Far out.
Okay.
Or at least this guy's arrangement does.
I wouldn't put it past old Merv.
Good for him.
I've
Wow.
seen jazz arrange. I've seen like videos of like guys at jazz clubs playing this song.
Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, again, that was just some dude's solo arrangement, but if the actual chart has all those key changes and modulations written in, we're so used to the like key changes that it's just sounds incredibly hip. Man, people used to know things. We used to be a proper country.
Don't let the Apple Podcast reviews get to you, Heigl. You don't have to like everything. You don't have to be this complimentary of Wheel of Fortune.
No, I just think it's fascinating. Like you could, it's like that thing I always talk about with like some of these guys who are like, first he was a roustabout, and then he sold cars door to door, and then he was a horse whisperer, and he was shot out of a cannon for several years, and that was the biography of Todd Browning, who like, and he was a castrati singer, and like it's just. And then he directed 4 or 5 of the biggest golden age movies Hollywood had ever seen. And then he died of emphysema in Santa Barbara. That's like all of these different old guys' biographies. I'm like, yeah, he used to really be able to live quite a varied life in America. Sorry, what were we talking about?
My favorite part about Merv is that on his tombstone, it says, "We will not be back after these messages."
That's pretty great.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
For him.
Funny guy, good sense of humor. Everybody liked him. Made an ungodly amount of money on $100 million from the Jeopardy theme alone. I can only imagine what syndication rights for that and Wheel of Fortune were. Good on you, Merv. You brought a lot of joy to a lot of people. Deeply closeted, though.
Aw.
I know. I should check that. Real quick.
Yeah, careful.
In an interview with the New York Times published in 2005, Merv Griffin said, quote, with a sly grin about his private life, "I tell everybody that I'm quarter sexual. I will do anything with anybody for a quarter." Moving on.
Yeah.
Merv's initial incarnation of Wheel of Fortune was extremely different than the one we know and love. In fact, this version from 1973 even had a different title. It was called Shopper's Bazaar. And the major difference was that players didn't win cash, but they won fake money as they answered puzzles. And they put this fake money towards prizes on the set, hence the Shopper's Bazaar. And this was actually, I didn't realize this, how the game was played until 1987. Contestants took the money they won during the show and spent it on prizes at the end of the episode instead of just going home with the cash and buying whatever they wanted. And then in 1987, they did a promotional gimmick called Month of Cash. Title needs work, and then they just kept it, and they just kept doing that and did away with all the prizes. Also, the wheel in this early version was extremely different. It was mounted vertically and spun automatically rather than by having contestants spin it. I think both of those things would have doomed the show. I mean, these early pilots didn't do very well, and I think that's a huge reason. Having the Wheel of Fortune wheel vertically, it makes it look corny. It makes it look like you said, like a carnival midway game. Something about having it like splayed out in front of you like an altar or something. There's something like very
iconography, man.
Yeah.
You ever seen those photos of like all those religious relics in like Rome or far-flung corners of Christianity in the world where they have like some saint's toenail and it's like ensconced in this thing of pure gold that's like 7 feet wide and, you know, worth more than the entire country's GDP at the time of construction? Simple iconography.
But just like the small choices behind it. I mean, vertical versus like having it laid out in the ground. I don't know, something about it. Something that looks more prime. Almost it's like a fire pit or something. Everybody's gathered around the wheel in a circle. It's not just like up on a wall hanging, you know? It's something very primal about this show for me.
Clearly.
Yeah. And the fact that like the contestants get to spin it themselves and that it's much more active. Imagine just having to like push a button or something like that's.
I thought they just did that to absolve them of like cheating or like rigging accusations.
I mean, there's still a lot of rumors that like Pat's able to like control it with like something in his shoe or whatever. I mean, in the way that people think that roulette wheels, there's like, you know, magnetized or something. They can get the ball to stop at a certain place. I don't know. There's all these theories about roulette wheels being rigged and all these theories about the Wheel of Fortune wheel being rigged.
Okay.
This early version of the wheel lacked the famously dreaded bankrupt wedge, but it featured a wedge where a contestant could call a vowel for free, which is a nice little twist there. And also it had a wedge where you could pick up a rotary phone on the set and hear a private clue about the puzzle that nobody else heard, which was like Phone a Friend 25 years early. Yeah, that's really weird. But yeah, this initial Shopper's Bazaar pilot for this early incarnation of Wheel of Fortune with its hokey carnival theme, it failed to impress network brass. And after a second failed pilot, NBC Vice President of Daytime, Lynn Bolin, really believed in the show, and she made a very risky deal with the network. She asked them to give her one more shot to put Wheel of Fortune on the air. I think they'd changed the title at this point. And she said if the show failed as the previous two versions had, they could fire her, and if it was successful, she wanted a raise. The risk paid off, and within weeks, Wheel of Fortune became the top daytime television show. This early version was on during the day. Now, for the second and third pilots of Wheel of Fortune, they hired Ed Burns, who's most familiar to me. He's an actor and comedian, but to me, he's most famous as playing Vince Fontaine in Grease. He was also on the 50s TV show 77 Sunset Strip. But he did not impress Merv Griffin. He kept chanting to himself A-E-I-O-U because he was trying to remember vowels and he couldn't. So he just kept reciting A-E-I-O-U, A-E-I-O-U over and over again. And Merv was like,
sometimes, but he never did. And sometimes why?
I don't know about that. But although, was that like Pluto? Was that like a late edition where it was like at the time it wasn't considered a swing case?
Oh, good question.
I don't know. So yeah, Merv was like, okay, how about we get somebody who actually like knows the alphabet and kind of has all that down pat. So in the show when
that one snuck up on me. How do we find someone who knows the alphabet? Certainly not in Hollywood, right?
Am I right?
Am I right? Hey, boom, the Dice Man. Man, Wither and your Dice Clay.
I thought that was Travolta. I thought you were keeping with the Grease theme.
No.
Never. Can you do your oh geez?
Oh jeez.
Is he from Philly? He's got to be from Philly. Okay, wait, I got to look this up. He's from New Jersey.
Yeah. Well, that explains so much.
So anyway, this Ed Burns guy didn't know the alphabet. He was out. I should make sure. Oh, he is dead. Okay, he can't sue me. And he probably has a lot less money than the Merv Griffin estate. So they decided to go with a different host once the show went into production in December 1974. Tell us about early Wheel of Fortune host Chuck Woolery, a game show legend. In game show circles, he's a very big deal. I don't know how much you know about Chuck Woolery.
Not much. From the show's debut in January of 1975 to December 15th, 1981, the Wheel's first host, the Wheel's first servant, really, was Chuck Woolery. A TV game show legend, as you mentioned, who also hosted The Love Connection, Scrabble, and Greed. That sounds like a great, triptych for like it sounds like The Sins, you know,
Love
Dante's
Connections.
Levels of Hell, the love connection, Scrabble, greed, grocery shopping when you're on an empty stomach. But did you know that Chuck Woolery had a career as a musician in the 1960s as the singer for the psych pop duo The Avant-Garde, who had a top 40 hit in 1968 with Naturally Stoned? What does it sound like?
It's bad. It's really bad. It's like a bad version of that Kenny Rogers just came in to see what condition my condition's in. The song from The Big Lebowski.
Yeah.
It's like a bad version of that, which is already.
So it's good? You're not selling me on it.
But I know I can never make it, baby, without you. I can get a good vibration when I put my mind on you. I get a real sensation, feel like I'm naturally stoned. Naturally stoned.
Chuck also got the shout out in Hey Ladies. Hey Ladies! From the Beastie Boys in their 1989 hit Off Paul's Boutique.
I Date Women on TV with the help of Chuck Woolery. Yeah, because he was the host of the Love Connection.
Oh, we should do that record, man.
Oh,
That's a
yeah.
great one. Talking about sampling.
Well, wait a minute though. Did the Beastie Boys actually show deference and shine a little light to the people they sampled?
But they sampled a lot more creatively than just
Yeah.
lifting an entire vocal melody and making a backing track to it.
A la Mobes.
Yeah. You ever see that tweet where they're doing The Raven as read by the Beastie Boys?
No.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary.
I can't believe that. I mean, I love the Beastie Boys. I do, shockingly. I know that doesn't seem
Yeah.
like I can't believe they got as much mileage out of their bit as they did, honestly.
I mean, you know, at least they had some talent. Rick Rubin is really the guy from that scene who got the furthest on the least.
Did you know that Ad Rock dated Molly Ringwald? They met on the set of Pickup Artist, and then he married, I can never say her name, Iona Sky from Say Anything.
Oh, far out.
Who's the 60s pop singer Donovan's daughter, which I bet you didn't know. Yeah. And then now he's married to Kathleen Hanna, I think.
Yeah. He's just, it's so funny that Donovan also became like the like 60s Sunshine Bop guy with cred, all on the strength of Hurdy Gurdy Man and Season of the Witch with very strategic like
needle drops,
sync licenses. Yeah.
Oh my God. And the David Fincher in Zodiac at the beginning of the movie when the kids get shot to Hurdy Gurdy Man. That's so good. That's an incredible use of that song. We're going long today, folks.
Probably don't keep that one.
Why?
When those kids get shot, it's so good.
Well,
I know what you mean. It's just funny. Okay, anyway. The Vanna to Woolery's Pat was a model named Susan Stafford, who we will get to in a bit. Woolery got in trouble early in his tenure on the show for hugging female contestants after they solved a puzzle. It must have been pretty bad because people were complaining about this back in the mid-70s.
When Quaaludes were legal.
Yeah, I mean, something Andrew Cuomo? I don't know. The outcry was so bad that he felt moved to address the controversy on a show, saying during a 1976 episode, "I like to hug folks. I'm a hugger." Is that where that comes from?
No, I think he's...
As like a bit? People being like, "I'm a hugger."
I don't know. I just assume
I've seen that in like multiple sitcoms and like it's become like it's almost like TV tropesy-esque. Like,
oh, that's
like
interesting.
someone goes for the handshake and they're like, "I'm a hugger."
Are you a hugger?
I have to read the room.
Okay, that's a better you are actually, I think this is something people should know about us. You are actually a lot more warm than I would have assumed. And I'm actually a lot more reserved than a lot of people assume.
That's true.
I was at a meeting today and at an office with people I didn't know, and they went in to hug me, and I offered my hand.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I get worse is the pound handshake thing. I go full on white guy with that.
No.
Yeah. Oh, never feel so white in those moments as in those moments. He said, "A lot of people are handshakers. I'm a hugger. And one more thing, if you were here, I'd hug you too."
That sounds like a threat.
Yeah, it's so ominous. If you were here, I'd hug. If you read it in like the Werner Herzog voice, I like to hug folks. I'm a hugger. Lots of people are handshakers. I am a hugger.
Wait, somebody was
One more thing. If you were here, I'd hug you too.
somebody was telling me last night that he was on Conan's podcast, and he was talking about what was some dumb movie that he really liked, or some dumb TV show.
He pops up in the most random places. No, I mean he's in one of the Jack Reacher movies. He was on an episode of or maybe multiple ones of the Baby Yoda Star Wars thing, because there was like a clip of him going, "I would like to see the baby." It's so amazing.
Oh, it was Honey Boo Boo. It was Honey Boo Boo. He loved Honey Boo Boo.
Yeah, that tracks. I find her utterly fascinating. That's edging into Arnold. It's a regional distinction. Woolry hosted from the show's premiere in 1975 until Christmas Day 1981, except for 1 week in August of 1980, when a pre-Jeopardy Alex Trebek filled in when Chuck got sick. One of the many aspects that Wheel and Jep have in common, ultimately, as with so many of us, Woolry's avarice would be his downfall. At least as far as... I've never been motivated by money in my life. I'm a musician, for Christ's sake, and writer. Ultimately, as with so many of us, Woolry's avarice would be his downfall, at least as far as Wheel of Fortune is concerned. By 1981, Wheel had started to do so well in the ratings that it had bested the Goliath of game shows, Family Feud. And as such, Woolry felt like it was time to renegotiate his salary and get something on par with what Family Feud host Richard Dawson was making. In numerical terms, he wanted to raise from $65,000 a year, which seems very low. Even when you adjust it for inflation, it's $225,000, which is like what the Friends guys were making. Weren't they making $1 million an episode? At
Yeah,
one point?
I think
like
by the end.
them and Frasier. And he wanted to go up to $500,000. Merv Griffiths said he would go as high as $400,000, which is still an enormous percentage increase. But Woolry really wanted to hold out for that extra $100,000. And the network was so desperate to keep things running smoothly with their cash cow that they stepped in and said they'd be willing to pay the extra $100,000, presumably rather than Griffin having to pay it. But Griffin refused on principle, apparently threatening to bring the show to a rival network. And ultimately, the door hit Woolry where the good Lord split him. It landed on the Love Connection a short time later.
Yeah, I'm a little confused, and I didn't really think it was that interesting to get into, like, who owned what of this show, like why Merv was able to be like, I can take this to another network whenever I want.
Just in the way the contracts are
Yeah,
written.
no, I mean,
my brother.
Yeah, this is clearly a smart man, so I would imagine that he had smart lawyers, which is all the more reason why I should be careful what I say about him in this episode.
As you meditate on that, we'll be right back with more Too Much Information after these messages.
The new hosting gig for Wheel of Fortune went, of course, to Pat Sajak, who made his debut on December 28th, 1981. He opened with a medium funny joke making fun of his short stature. I'll probably splice in his whole little intro here. It was very sweet.
And now, here's your new host, Pat Sajak.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack Clark. Morning, everyone. Welcome to Wheel of Fortune. Please do not adjust your sets at home. Chuck Woolery has not shrunk. A lot of people are playing with a vertical hold right now. As Jack mentioned, my name is Pat Sajak, and I've been fortunate enough to wander onto the set of a very successful program, has been for a long time. One of the big reasons for that success, of course, was Chuck Woolery. Most of you know by now, Chuck has decided to leave the show to concentrate on other areas in his career. He's a very talented actor and singer and songwriter. So I want to take a minute, and I know everyone in the studio does, and all his fans around the country, to wish Chuck nothing but the best for future success and happiness. Chuck, this is for you.
It was very self-deprecating, which I think is perfect, because at the end of the day, that's what all the best hosts are. Your job as a host isn't to be the most dynamic person on the screen. It's to make the other people around you look good and throw to them and support them.
That's why Jimmy Fallon sucks. Or he's good at laughing, but he and James Corden, all of this generation, they don't know how to defer. They always got to mug their way in and sing or play guitar and grin.
People like Carson and Dick Cavett did it right, though, because they would show that there was a lot more going on underneath the surface. but they were aware that they had, Orson Welles there, Alfred Hitchcock, or whoever Carson had on, Robin Williams. It's an art. It's an art.
It is.
It's a hard one to master.
Yeah, and there's definitely something else about like, attention spans falling by the wayside.
Right.
As like a, talk shows died when the internet really came out because you could just suddenly go to Twitter and find out everyone's thoughts about everything, right? Like, so you don't need a celebrity telling you anymore. So they immediately had to pivot to all the clickbaity. Nobody wants to hear two people talk anymore. That's why we're not getting paid.
This was a pro move from Sajak because he'd wanted to be doing this his entire life. He fostered an interest in broadcasting since he was a little boy when he would borrow wooden spoons from the kitchen and pretend they were microphones, which is adorable and also seems like something I would have done. One of his earliest gigs was at a Spanish-language radio station in his hometown of Chicago in the mid-'60s, despite the fact that he spoke no Spanish, which always confused him. He was hired to come in and do a news briefing in English once an hour from midnight until 6 a.m. Oof. He would tell the New York Times 2 decades later, "To this day, I do not know why." He was just that good. They wanted that Sajak magic, even if they had no idea what he was saying. This was in the mid-'60s, and fearing the draft, Sajak enlisted in the armed forces because he believed that would give him more of a say over where he was stationed and what sort of job he did. Didn't quite work out for him. After getting bounced around in a bunch of different jobs and different bases stateside, he wound up as a DJ on Armed Forces Radio in Saigon, taking over the Dawn Busters radio show that had previously been hosted by Adrian Cronauer, also known as the guy Robin Williams plays in Good Morning Vietnam. In fact, Pat Sajak maintained Cronauer's tradition of kicking off each episode with a hearty, you gotta say it with me now, "You're not gonna do it right, and it's gonna make me mad." Good
Masked Singer.
All right. Anyway, Pat Sajak wrote about his experience for the Armed Forces Radio in a piece for USO.org a few years ago, which I thought was very nice. He said, "I used to feel a bit guilty about my relatively soft duty. After..." Oh, man.
Probably just the dehydration talking, but God, is that funny.
After all, I was billeted in a hotel, and there were plenty of nice restaurants around. But I always felt a little better when I met guys who came into town from the field and thanked us for bringing them a little bit of home. I always thought it was strange that they should be thanking me, given what so many of them are going through on a daily basis. But they reminded me of the importance of providing entertainment to those who serve, something the USO knows very well. To this day, my fellow vets from that era repeat those thank yous, and it's really very humbling. My respect for those who serve has stayed with me throughout my life, and my time in the military, particularly my time in Vietnam, are among the things in my life of which I'm the most proud. That's very nice, but there's a moment from his time with the Armed Forces Network that he is not that proud of. I'm speaking of the time in 1969 when he accidentally interrupted President Nixon's Christmas message to the troops. He continues in the piece for the USO.org. Apparently what I deemed to be the close to the speech was merely an effective pause, and Nixon's paper shuffling was nothing more than a short break. To make matters worse, I heard Nixon say, "And now I'd like to speak directly to the men and women serving our country in Vietnam." To say the least, I had a quick decision to make. Should I jump back on the air and confess that I'd cut off the leader of the free world in the middle of his address? Or should I just keep playing music and hope for the best? It was as if a little angel was perched on one shoulder and a little devil on the other. The angel, of course, was right. The president was speaking, and it was my duty to reconnect him. But I had to admit that the devil was making some pretty good points, too. His main argument went like this. Because the CBS feed was coming directly into the AFN studios, I was the only one monitoring it. So I was literally the only human being in the world who realized that the people the president thought he was speaking to couldn't actually hear him. So really, what was the harm? True, he was sending holiday greetings to the troops and promising to bring them home soon, but they were already listening to the 1910 Fruit Gum Company singing 1, 2, 3 Red Light, a terrible song. Heck, now I'd be cutting off that fine song in the middle, and two wrongs don't make a right, do they? And by the time I explained what had happened, he might be finished anyway. In short, the devil made me not do it. Flip Wilson joke.
Yeah.
It is with pain and embarrassment that I confess the secret of my Pat Sajak Vietnam DJ days, that my comrades in Vietnam never heard the president's words to them back in Christmas 1969. So very belatedly, I want you all to know that Richard M. Nixon wishes you a very Merry Christmas.
That's great. I would have preferred it if he would have said, like, Richard M. Nixon wants you to know that you're some of the finest meat this country has ever thrown into the industrial military complex. Throw your bodies onto the Agent Orange.
Well, Heigl, tell us about Pat Sajak's days in the Pentagon. It just gets weirder and weirder.
Yeah, I wonder if he ever ran into William Peter Blatty crawling around the Pentagon. After his stint in Vietnam, Sajak returned to the U.S. to work in what has been described as the bowels of the Pentagon, running slide projectors for military officials. He then bounced around several radio networks and then climbed the ranks in a local Nashville TV station, WSM-TV, ultimately taking over as weatherman. His tenure there would lead to a bit of music history. Apparently, Nashville songwriter Ben Peters was watching one day when Sajak made a comment about daytime highs and nighttime lows. Peters liked that turn of phrase, which inspired him to write the song Daytime Friends, which became a #1 for Kenny Rogers in 1977. Love Kenny Rogers.
Do you?
Yeah, it's just hilarious. He's the country singer and chicken magnate. Come on. That's a Springsteen song. Sajak made an impression, was poached for NBC's Los Angeles affiliate, where he caught the eye of Merv Griffin, who enjoyed his odd sense of humor. When he needed a replacement for Wheel of Fortune, he went to Sajak. The network brass, on the other hand, were not thrilled at the idea of handing their game show cash cow over to a weatherman, and a local one at that. But Merv dug his heels in, as he was wont to do, apparently.
No.
And once again, ended his meeting with NBC executives by saying he would stop taping new episodes until they greenlit Sajak. Sajak was, in short order, hired. The show became such a success that in 1983, Griffin spun the show off into a syndicated nighttime edition to supplement the network daytime edition. Wheel of Fortune was a daytime show, since in the 70s and early 80s, game shows were seen as daytime phenomenon, like The Price is Right, Let's Make a Deal, and so forth. The top-tier daytime shows were given additional spots in prime time, usually with better prizes and more money, which is what happened with Wheel.
Yeah, I recently discovered that they did this with The Price is Right. I guess there's been a nighttime version of The Price is Right for the last 5 years that I had no idea about until I was visiting my parents at Christmas. And it's the only time I ever watched network TV. And yeah, I didn't realize they were still doing that. So if you're a big fan of Price is Right, but have a job, you're in luck. And you're not a kid homesick from school. You're in luck.
All this to say, starting in 1983, there were 2 editions of Wheel every day.
Could you think of a time? 2 editions of Wheel every day. We didn't know how good we had it.
Man, the 70s. Jimmy I actually learned today that Jimmy Carter created the initial version of what would become the Contras. Right before he left office, he sowed the seeds for the Contras. Everyone blames Reagan, and they rightly should, but it was actually Carter who got that all started.
I didn't know that.
Long dying peanut farmer. Okay. What are we talking about? By 1986, the show was bringing in $100 million a year and on ratings high with 30 million viewers, twice as many as the next highest syndicated show, MASH.
That's nuts. It's double MASH.
That's a share. But the whole 2-show thing would be a problem in 1989 when Sajak made the ill-fated decision to host his own talk show. Game shows, you see, were small potatoes to Sajak. He'd grown up idolizing the great Jack Parr, one of the early Tonight Show hosts. I read about Jack Parr, and I read about how he used to memorize his monologues. He would write them in print and then longhand cursive and then type them. And so I actually used to do that when I had to memorize stuff.
Wow, that's really cool. Oh, so not as any kind of cue card, but just so that once he wrote it so many times that
he would just do it by himself. Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. I had a teacher in high school who, before every exam, he gave us a little tiny piece of paper and said, "You can take this piece of paper into the exam, write whatever you need onto it." And and by the time you had done that, everything you needed, you never looked at it because, it was really smart.
They got our asses. When Parr's successor, Johnny Carson, began to intimate that he was slowing down in the late 80s, CBS decided that they wanted to start a late-night talk show of their own to have up and running by the time Carson hung it up. This seemed like a good idea in theory, but in practice, it just meant going head-to-head against Johnny Carson with a fledgling show, which was a suicide mission, as we will find out after this sentence. For this mission, CBS approached Sajak, who stepped back from the network daytime edition of Wheel in order to take a shot at his dreams. The daytime edition was taken over by Bob Goen, later of Entertainment Tonight fame, until it was canceled in 1991. Sajak continued to host the primetime version. This all seems like weird TV network stuff. There are two versions of the same show at different times with different hosts. And ironically, the director of Wheel of Fortune in this era was Dick Carson, Johnny's brother. That's weird. Nepotism. CBS went really hard for the Pat Sajak show. In an interview held a month before it premiered, Sajak said he was, quote, not looking to raise the level of TV, but stated his intent to, quote, steal liberally from talk shows past and present. And he would do exactly that. The 90-minute program had all the trimmings of a Carson-esque late-night chat show. There was a sidekick, an announcer, a band. The first guest was Chevy Chase, who, in true Chevy fashion, interrupted the next guest's interview on the couch by raising his hand and asking if he could use the bathroom. That's funny. This would end up being an ironic choice of a first guest, considering Chevy would go on to have an even bigger talk show bomb on Fox just a few years later. Man, talk shows on Fox is where they really sent people to die. They did that with poor
Joan Rivers too, right?
Yeah, Joan Rivers.
Well, that was after she got passed over for the
For Carson.
For Carson, yeah, because she was his official guest host, and then when she learned that his like shortlist for potential successors, she was not even in the running for that. She said it was like one of the worst moments of her life. She felt so betrayed.
Yeah, I wrote a piece on that.
Did you really?
People.
Oh.
Yeah. Hilariously, Sajak's house band was led by jazz musician Tom Scott, who then went on to serve the same role on the short-lived Chevy Chase show. You compare this to the late-night televisual equivalent of the woman who was on the Titanic when it sank, and then later on the Titanic's sister ship when it struck a mine and also sank.
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
If there is an afterlife, she must have been so pissed off. Did she survive both
times? She
times?
both of them. And she also, the Titanic's third sister ship, a cruiser rammed it, a British naval cruiser called the HMS Hawk, and it went kind of crippled back to port with this big hole in it. So she was on all three of those.
Is there a fourth one we could get her on?
Violet Jessup is her name. I have a fact about Violet Jessup that I want to share with you. Years after her retirement, Jessup claimed to have received a telephone call on a stormy night from a woman who asked Jessup if she had saved a baby the night the Titanic sank. Yes, Jessup replied. The voice then said, I was that baby, laughed, and hung up. Her friend and biographer said it was most likely some children in the village playing a joke on her. She replied, no, I'd never told that story to anyone before I told you now.
That's weird.
Yeah, isn't it weird? I like it, though.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Oh, you don't? Oh, I like it.
That's weird.
See, again, you're actually huggy. I'm actually into the creepy stuff.
Oh, man, I found a new pitch for our new angle for the 60s thing. Is did you know that the Black Panthers had an official R&B band?
No, I didn't. Tell me more.
It's called The Lumpin', which is hilarious.
Wait, how do you spell that?
Lupen. And they came out of the Oakland chapter, the original one.
Oh, the Wikipedia page is a list of their songs. Bobby Must Be Set Free, parentheses, Free Bobby. Old Pig Nixon. Revolution's Gonna Come. Revolution is the only solution. We Can't Wait Another Day. Set Sister Erica Free. I don't know who Erica is. Huh.
Well, despite receiving an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Art Direction and featuring a wide range of guests, from Leslie Nielsen to Dolly Parton, Sajak's show only ran for a single 165-episode season from January 1989 to April 1990. To be fair, it was up against some serious competition. In addition to Carson, it also had to contend with Late Night with David Letterman and The Arsenio Hall Show, both of which had much more coolness cred. Despite its strong start, it eventually was dead last in the late show ratings. The network was not subtle in their displeasure at this. They began having guest hosts 1 day a week, a move that prompted Sajak to say years later, the show was going so well that they actually auditioned replacements for me on the air. One of these guest hosts was Rush Limbaugh, who is in hell, suffering, which led to an especially contentious bit of television.
Yes, the episode with Rush Limbaugh aired on March 30th, 1990. And Rush was gonna rush. So in a somewhat radical departure from this show's regular format, he entered out into the audience. He left his desk and went out into the audience to get a response from the crowd about a bill that had recently been vetoed in Idaho that would have restricted abortion. After announcing that the bill was dead, Limbaugh approached the woman who was cheering loudly and gave her the mic. This is when things got tense, and the woman denounced Limbaugh's anti-abortion statements earlier in the show by saying, "Women's lives are more important than any potato." I would imagine that's a jab at Vice President Dan Quayle's famous misspelling of potato. She also said, "You don't know what it's about. You'll never have a baby. You'll never be pregnant. You'll never have an abortion." All facts. Other members of the crowd chimed in and began to heckle Rush, leading him to address the camera and claim that he went into the audience in an attempt to show the viewing public that there was an underlying prejudice against him. What a pro. The heckling apparently got so bad that he decided to conduct his next interview with a guest in a different studio.
Come on. Thought you were a red-blooded American man, Rush.
It gets so much worse. After the commercial break, Limbaugh attempted to address the topic of affirmative action, but was heckled again by several male audience members wearing ACT UP t-shirts. ACT UP is the activist organization of gay men, I believe.
AIDS awareness.
AIDS awareness.
Yeah.
They called Rush a murderer before he could make his point. Rush sat silently with the camera focused on him for nearly a minute, while audience members continued shouting phrases like, "You want people to die." Limbaugh responded with, "I'm not responsible for your behavior." After another commercial break, Limbaugh returned and conducted the final interview segment after the audience had been cleared. Limbaugh later claimed that these dissident audience members were planted by the show's producers as a publicity stunt. It's always the victim. Perhaps not coincidentally, the Pat Sajak show was canceled 2 weeks later. CBS restored its CBS late-night block of movies and reruns and would not program another late-night talk show until The Late Show with David Letterman debuted in August 1993, 3 years later. A talk show wouldn't ever take over the Pat Sajak Show's old studio until The Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson moved in 22 years later in September 2022. As a tribute, Ferguson installed an autographed publicity photo of Sajak from the Pat Sajak Show era on The Late Late Show's faux mantelpiece set, alongside those of Letterman and previous Late Late Show hosts Tom Schneider and Craig Kilborn. But lest you feel bad for Sajak, rest assured that he came out ahead. His deal called for him to be paid for 2 years, regardless of whether or not the show actually lasted that long. So Pat got $60,000 a week for a while for doing nothing. And thankfully, Sajak's dream of hosting a talk show didn't die completely. He became a frequent guest host for CNN's Larry King Live and also subbed in for Regis Philbin on occasion on Live with Regis and Kelly. He also had a wide variety of guest spot cameos over the years, including in The A-Team, Just Shoot Me, The Commish, which is a show that I have no recollection of, but apparently was on for 5 years and starred Michael Chiklis, The Larry Sanders Show, The King of Queens, and a guest vocal spot on our beloved Rugrats.
The Commish? This is wild.
Right? I have no memory of the show.
I thought the whole thing about Chiklis was that when the shoot came out, they had plucked him from obscurity.
I thought so too. It's on for 5 years. I'm sure somebody's gonna tweet at us, be like, "You never heard of the Commish?"
Yeah, man. Jason Alexander said he'd been offered a role in the show, but turned it down because Seinfeld got picked up for another season and was the most popular show of all time. Good Lord. The Commish. Wow, Wither the Commish.
I know. Well, despite all these guest spots, Pat Sajak is fairly adverse to publicity. Until 2010, he reportedly refused to license his face to any sort of Wheel of Fortune toys, board games, video games, or other merch because he was concerned about the impact it would have on his children, which I think is admirable. He turned down the cover of People magazine while promoting his talk show in 1989 because he didn't want to be, quote, any place where 1 week it's me and the next week it's John Hinckley. Failed President Reagan assassin John Hinckley.
And current musician.
Yeah. Who was requested to open for the Black Keys, I believe. and then Patrick Carney retweeted it.
That is just the most. That whole is just the biggest touchy spot for me. I hate it so much.
I know. It's not fair.
I do genuinely think it's irresponsible. Like, I get the idea of restorative justice and everything, but
To parlay that into a music career is
yeah, and also just that, like, showing that lone wolves eventually get what they want after long enough is a great message to send to other lone wolves. Just wait it out after you kill those people, man. It'll turn around for you. Don't worry. You'll get out, and a bunch of irony poisoned internet weirdos will make your career happen because they're just happy you tried to plug the worst president of all time.
fame really is forever.
I just had a vision of John Hinckley Jr. covering Fame.
Oh my.
So Sajak is also famous for, let's say, bucking the prevailing Hollywood trend of being a liberal. It's not a huge accident that Rush Limbaugh guest hosted his talk show. Sajak keeps it off the game show, but per his Wikipedia, he is an external director of conservative publishing house Heigl Publishing. Come on, guys, really? They say conservatives have no creativity, but it's right there. He's been a member of the board of directors for the Claremont Institute, a conservative think tank, and he is also a financial supporter of the Young Americas Foundation, which sponsors conservative speakers on college campuses. He has written for the National Review's website, making his debut in 2010 with a piece that questions whether or not public employees should be allowed to vote on issues that would benefit them directly. I've been told I virtue signal on this show, so let's just let that one lie out there. No comment. He also has contributed to the center-right socio-political social networking site Ricochet.com and has written articles for a website called Human Events, which has featured headlines like, "Opposed to Obamacare? Then you must be a racist." In a direct quote from his Wikipedia page, it says that Sajak rejects scientific opinions on climate change.
End quote.
End quote. And in 2015, he tweeted, "I now believe global warming alarmists are unpatriotic racists knowingly misleading for their own ends. Good night."
Good day, sir.
It's like when he was alive. Was it James Caan who would sign off everything? End of tweet.
Yeah. Yes.
Sajak elaborated later on Megyn Kelly's The Kelly File that he was, quote, just mocking the name calling that is directed at global warming skeptics within and without the scientific community. More recently, he posed for a photo with GOP Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. All of this led to a 2014 article in Salon by Daniel D'Addario, which looks at the phenomenon of conservatism among game show hosts. Let's quote from it fairly extensively. Begin quote, "Drew Carey of The Price is Right has been an outspoken libertarian since his sitcom actor days, telling Reason magazine, as far as your personal goals are and what you actually want to do with your life, it should never have to do with the government. You should never depend on the government for your retirement, your financial security, for anything. Bob Barker is better known for his animal advocacy than for his endorsement of conservative lobbyist David Jolly in a special House election in Florida. Chuck Woolery is as active as Sajak on Twitter and has written for the Washington Times, which is a notoriously right-wing counterpunch to the Washington Post. Alex Trebek of Jeopardy cited in a recent New Republic profile someone speaking approvingly of the Tea Party. Somebody was saying on television a few days ago that the Tea Party is a reflection of the people. There are a lot of people out there who are not happy with the way things are going, and they've banded together. He seemed curious about the arch-conservative movement, if not explicitly approving, describing himself as apolitical, even despite having reportedly hosted a 2010 Republican fundraiser. D'Addario continues, but is it surprising that these fellows trend towards conservatism? For one thing, they're older, affluent white men, a group that outside of Hollywood doesn't vote Democratic, at least not recently, and these men are as, quote, outside of Hollywood as you can get while still being paid to be on camera. Sajak has spent decades suffused in a self-consciously retrograde environment in which his female co-host's role is to silently smile in a brand new evening gown, and his role is to cheer on contestants to win money on the basis of merit. On game shows, so the thinking goes, there's no such thing as luck. Indeed, FCC rules prohibit game shows from stacking the deck in favor of one contestant or another. And so it is that game show hosts might extrapolate from their experience that luck is not particularly meaningful. that accumulation of wealth is based on one's abilities at playing a game that's the same for everyone. Articulate, well cited.
What do you think about that?
It tracks. I mean, the whole like rich white guy thing is hardly, that's in every industry, every creative industry though. I mean, good for him though, that in Sajak's last appearance as host of the game show, he said he never incorporated politics into his hosting duties. He said the show included no social issues, no politics, and was just a game. Which is an easy thing to say about politics when you're a rich white guy. I'm not saying everyone should insert their political views into their art, obviously, but I'm just saying that's a very easy thing to say when you have the soft hands of a creative man your entire life.
He served.
I just like that's a Tracy Jordan bit from 30 Rock where he's like trying to connect to the working man and he's like, let me feel the rough skin on your palms.
Well, we've gone way too far without mentioning our beloved Vanna White, who by all accounts is an honest-to-God earth angel. She replaced prior host letter turner Susan Stafford, a veteran of the Woolery years, who stayed with Sajak for a year before, checks notes, leaving the show to do humanitarian work. Very nice. Producers were tasked with finding a replacement for her, and Vanna White was selected because she reportedly impressed Merv Griffin during her audition, which consisted of walking gracefully from one side of the room to the other and turning letters without making a mistake. She enthralled Merv with her skills. She enthralled her with her acumen. Hannibal Lecter.
Thrill me with your acumen.
That's right. That was right.
Yeah.
And she ended up getting the job. And also, she seems to have Pat Sajak's skill at self-deprecation, because she would later say she was the last of 200 women to audition, and the producers went with her because she was last, and they just wanted the process to be over. She is, of course, selling herself short. Vanna was a game show pro, having appeared on The Price is Right soon after moving to LA in 1980 as a contestant, not as a model or whatever you want to call it. But that's not all. She also appeared on The Dating Game in the 70s, so she had 2 game show appearances under her belt when she auditioned. Despite this prior experience in the game show realm, Vanna would claim that she was absolutely terrified during her audition and assumed she bombed. She said, I was probably the most nervous because I wanted this job so badly. I couldn't even talk. I could hardly walk. My mouth was quavering. My knees were shaking. I thought, I've blown this. And her nerves were understandable because she was a hard-up actress who slept on the floor of her apartment for a time because she couldn't afford a bed. But her fears proved unfounded, and she got the gig. I found out I got it the day before Thanksgiving 1982, and it was one of the happiest days of my life, she told Fox News in 2017. I was sitting in my apartment when I suddenly got a phone call. I literally screamed out loud. Vanna made her debut on December 13th, 1982, almost exactly a year after Sajak made his, and the first ever letter she turned was my favorite letter, actually. A T.
6. Oh.
That was good. That was very good. Thankfully, she and Pat hit it off immediately, and she would describe their relationship as, quote, brotherly and sisterly chemistry. Even so, he's made some comments on air that have raised some eyebrows and garnered headlines from our colleagues in the internet news trade. As one episode drew to a close, Pat asked Vanna, so when you're away from the exciting world of show business, is there a place you go to relax? Vanna replied, yeah, to my garden in my backyard. It's peaceful, it's quiet, there's trees, there's birds. How about you? Sajak responded in deadpan fashion, you don't know this, but I actually go to your garden. I'm usually there about 2 or 3 in the morning. Don't be alarmed.
That's medium funny.
Another time, Pat asked Vanna if she was an opera buff, which inevitably led to him asking, have you ever watched opera in the buff?
That's not.
But back to more wholesome topics. They've reportedly only had one argument about whether or not it's okay to put ketchup on a hot dog. Pat Sajak is from Chicago, and it's against the laws of God and nature for Chicago-style hot dogs to have ketchup. Where do you fall on that?
Oh, I mean, I have relatives in Chicago, but we didn't enforce such purity in Pennsylvania. I don't really care. It's, if you ever, like, again, not to be this guy, but like, you know what's in a hot dog? Who gives a shit what you put on it? Sprinkle some fentanyl on there. Like, who gives I don't know.
There was also an April Fool's Day episode where they pretended to be married, and all this makes me wonder how much of a joke this is to Pat Sajak. It's all starting to seem a little George Michael, maybe from Arrested Development to me. Do we think Pat Sajak's in love with Vanna?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's like the classic forbidden coworker thing. You know, there's just like, you're like, you know, for decades, just like simmering in that. I mean, think about it, with the economy and the way that
An affair with your coworker in this economy?
well, yes. First one, a hotel room just for noon? My God. You can't rent Airbnbs by the hour. And the cleaning fees, don't get me started. No, but I mean, like, nobody stays at jobs, like, especially in creative industries these days. So, like, you get, 5-6 years before your company folds or lays you off. So it's like, you know, doing it for 50 years, just lusting after someone so tantalizingly out of reach must have corroded his soul.
You have a lot of thoughts about this, which
I gotta earn my keep somehow.
You always do. Well, when Vanna's not bantering with Pat Sajak or revealing letters, her chief duty is clapping. The Guinness Book of World Records includes her as, quote, television's most frequent clapper. She averages more than 600 claps per show, which comes out to nearly 5 million claps over the course of 41 seasons. I'm unclear if they factor in the daytime edition of the show, and that was on too, 'cause she was on that as well. I'm not sure. It's all very complicated. She's quoted as saying, "It's hard to believe I don't have calluses. It feels great to have this achievement, and my kids are even more impressed than me."
Are they?
And also on the topic of truly absurd stats, as of 2019, it's estimated that Vanna White has cumulatively walked more than 2,000 miles on the stage, revealing letters going back and forth. Interestingly, Vanna didn't host an episode of the show solo until December 9th, 2019, when regular host Pat Sajak took a 3-week hiatus to recover from emergency intestinal surgery. Vanna's also apparently a huge crossword puzzle fan and takes an active role in helping come up with the puzzles for each game, which I think is great.
And I helped.
And she helped, yeah. We can't talk about Vanna White without talking about her fashion, of course. She's famously outfitted in a different gown each night, leading to a fervent fan base to eagerly tune in to see what she's wearing. This has led to a phenomenon known as Vanamania. Do you remember this? I kind of, like, in the early 90s, when I would visit my grandparents who would buy the, like, National Enquirer type stuff, I remember Vanna being, like, a big figure in that world.
I'll tell you, brother. I'll tell you one thing. Not too many people in my circle in central Pennsylvania picking up evening gowns.
Well, no, they weren't picking up evening gowns, but they were, like, just in awe of what she was wearing.
No, we avert our eyes and pray.
No, I know I rag on central Pennsylvania a lot, but no, I don't remember a fashion component being a part of it. I remember people, like, obviously, like I said, I grew up with her as this, like, figure of glamour, so that's probably, like, just thinking of, Vanna White means glamorous, beautiful woman. But, like, I don't remember it being particularly, like, relegated. Who designed for it? Was it, like, De La Renta or, like, Ferragamo? Like, anybody important? Or was it just, like, from the Calvin Klein collection that I could get at Marshall's?
I don't know, but probably everybody, because the popular lore states that she's never repeated a dress in her 40 plus years on the show, which isn't strictly true. She actually repeated one in September 2020, and there's actually a short video about it on the Wheel of Fortune social accounts in which she admits that she's finally repeating an outfit, and she sighs and says that it's, quote, so 2020, as in yet another terrible thing to happen in a terrible year. Despite this horrific setback of repeating an outfit, Vanna White has worn upwards of 8,000 dresses over the years, so I would assume she had something from everybody. During the show's season, she goes to fittings every 2 weeks and tries on between 40 and 60 dresses. "I've worn everything," White said. "Everything from slinky to tight to sequins to satin, whatever it may be. Her favorites," she says, "are the comfortable ones. And if one's too tight, I'm only wearing them for 30 minutes. I just hold my breath for 30 minutes. That's horrifying. But this is cute. Pat, I guess, matches his tie to Vanna's dress. Which is
He's like, down bad.
It's like a prom couple.
Yeah,
it's a prom couple thing.
Down bad.
Yeah.
Oh, she for a week straight she wore Bob Mackie.
Oh, cool.
Christian Serrano has designed for her.
Is he the guy who did Piss Christ?
That's Damien Hirst, I thought.
No.
No, Christian Serrano was on Project Runway.
Oh, it's Andre Serrano. Excuse me. We regret the error. Piss Christ for those of you to going from Vanna White's gowns to Piss Christ is the work of American artist and photographer Andre Serrano. He's a conceptual artist. It's a piece that depicts a small plastic crucifix submerged in a small glass tank of the artist's own urine.
It's quite a beautiful photo, actually.
Piss Christ, I mean, it kind of does.
If it wasn't called that, people would like. It does. Yes, it does what it says on the tin.
Yeah.
She has her own page on the website where you can see each dress, actually.
Wait, how far back does it go?
I think it's just through the week, although there is a there is a substantial
Piss Christ?
archival photo back. There's a substantial Piss Christ on the page. No, there is a Vanna's choice of yarn.
Yeah, we talk about that. Yeah, Vanna White, she has her own well, she's a big crochet. I don't know what the term is for crochetist. Thank you. And so she owns her own line of yarn called Vanna's Choice, which she donates a portion of the proceeds to St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, which is great. Again, she's an angel. Sadly, Vanna does not get to keep any of her gowns, so the production does loan them out to her if she has a charity event or promotional appearance. She said in 2023, "I don't even know if I have a sequined gown in my closet." Tragic. However, something she does have a lot of are classic cars, a woman after my own heart. She's an avid collector, with her two favorites being a 1957 Thunderbird, very nice, and a 1982 Rolls-Royce Silver Spur, also very nice.
Looks like she's the stylist for the show's a guy named Johnny Wujek, who's worked with a lot of different celebrities, including your beloved Katy Perry. He's from Detroit. Oh, he did the cupcake and functioning whipped cream bras for Katy Perry.
Oh, no way. The ones that fired?
Yeah, exactly.
That is very cool. Well, Vanna White can afford to get all the cars and yarn she wants because her net worth is estimated at around $85 million. Heigl, tell us about how she got there.
I will. Thank you. Vanna, her salary for Wheel was reportedly $10 million a year, but she makes upwards of $15 million by licensing her name and image for casino slot machines.
Yep.
Did not have that one on my bingo card. As of 2022, there were 250 iterations of Wheel of Fortune slot machines in use that have paid out more than $3.3 billion since their debut in 1996. That is oil money. That's pharma money. Holy shit. This country has a problem. In 2023, a story made the rounds that Vanna had hired the services of the highly aggressive big league attorney Brian Friedman. This report stated that White's last raise on the job had come some 18 years before, and that she had instead enjoyed lucrative but inconsistent bonuses attached to her initial contract. It also highlighted an alleged gap in her pay compared to Sajak's. There was one source that said she was making $3 million to Sajak's $10 million, but then she successfully renegotiated her deal for the Celebrity Wheel of Fortune spinoff, netting $100,000 an episode to Sajak's $400,000, which sources told TMZ was, quote, a meaningful bump. And TMZ knows about meaningful bumps.
Harvey Levin was our guest on Paul Anka today.
You sent me the edit room happening, man. That's
my day.
Okay. Apparently for the syndicated Wheel show, she wants 50% of what Sajak made. And though TMZ was not forthcoming about what his salary exactly is, it's clear that they aren't willing to go that high with her. There was a report in the New York Post today, you mentioned that as of taping, White is allegedly having difficulties working without Sajak. The source told Daily Mail, there's a part of her that wanted to walk away sooner. It's just so difficult to do this without Pat. Vanna feels she has put her time in. She wants the show to continue. This will require a younger female host, someone who can be to Ryan what she was to Pat. Another source claimed that she has problems working with Seacrest, saying she doesn't jibe with Ryan like she did with Pat, and no one really ever expected her to. Make of that what you will.
Makes me sad.
I mean, who could gel with Ryan Seacrest? He's a vacuum. You said earlier, that's his whole thing. Just being inoffensively on air, taking up space.
He must have so much money. So much money. He's
Money
a
and
he's a
dirt.
back end of Kardashians.
Yeah.
According to Parade, $500 million. Billion with a B. Sounds about right.
All right. Well, speaking of bad things, Vanna White took on Playboy in 1987. She appeared on the cover of Playboy wearing only a long sleeve shirt, and the inside spread featured her semi-nude in suggestive poses. That's my new Twitter bio, by the way. However, White didn't pose for the magazine. The photos were actually from 1982 and were taken immediately prior to her getting the Wheel of Fortune gig. That's low by Playboy. I would have thought that was more of a penthouse move.
Well, that's what they did with Marilyn Monroe. The photos of Marilyn in the first issue of Playboy, they purchased. She had done years earlier, like many years earlier, I think.
Nice. What a great industry. When I first moved to Hollywood, she said, I was too embarrassed to ask my dad for rent money. I was young and I wanted to do it on my own. So I did these lingerie shots, and from the moment I said I would do them, I thought I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm not going to ask my dad for money, so I'm just going to do it. These pictures were then purchased by Hef once she'd been made famous, and he misrepresented it to look like she'd agreed to appear in the magazine. White subsequently filed a $5.2 million lawsuit against Playboy, claiming the photos would, quote, tarnish her image as a modest, wholesome, attractive, and innocent all-American girl. And she also sued Hefner in federal court. Eventually, White dropped both lawsuits, claiming a statement that Playboy's promotion efforts have led the public to believe that the photographs are more revealing and provocative than they actually are. The Post reported in 1987, non-publication of the photographs under these circumstances may very well be more damaging to me in my career than the injury which I will undoubtedly suffer from publication. After the issues hit newsstands, as the Post reported, she went on Johnny Carson, apologized for her lacy wrongdoing, incredible work by that copy editor, and begged the public for forgiveness. Lacy wrongdoing. I've had a couple of those in my life. But things turned around for Vanna, aside from her immense riches and half-assed job.
Oh,
Come on. Let me say the quiet part out loud.
she seems like a nice person.
That's great for her. Nice people can profit from a system that rewards nothingness, too. She got a shout out from Nelly.
So how
Go.
that? See, friend of the
Wither
pod,
Nelly.
Nelly.
Friend of the pod, Nelly. In the song Ride With Me, Nelly raps, can I make it? Damn right. I'd be on the next flight. Paying cash, first class, sitting next to Vanna White.
You could have done that better. I just want to say.
No, I like doing it the podcaster cadence, the NPR cadence. It's like Charlton Heston reading the Ice-T lyrics.
Die, die, die.
Die, die. Die, pig, die. For years, Vanna didn't understand why she'd made it into his song. She would say, I was at an Easter party years ago and Nelly was at that party. Side note, what party? Oral history on that party when? I went up to him and I said, did we ever sit next to each other on an airplane? And he said, no, it just rhymed. True story. She then added, my kids were blown away. They thought I was really cool that I was in a Nelly song on the radio. That was one of the highlights of my career for my children. Like, wow, Mom, great song. I was popular on that one. I get a big kick out of it.
It was almost as cool as them learning that I clapped my way into the Guinness Book of World Records.
What was the methodology behind that?
I mean, I don't know. She does clap for like most of her time on the show, I guess.
But are they counting them? Did they have somebody
Yeah.
go through every
Well, no,
single
not-
episode?
Well, I mean that I don't know. It might have just been on average. They might have taken an average for a couple seasons.
That's lazy reporting Guinness.
My guess is that somebody like just made an assumption.
Hmm.
Here's a real clunker of a transition. But Vanna White didn't just get piles of cash from her time on Wheel of Fortune. She also got crucial support from fans during some of the most difficult times in her life. In 1986, she was preparing to marry her longtime boyfriend Josh Gibson, who, my notes tell me, was a nationally famous Chippendale dancer, sculptor, and carpenter who'd appeared on the soap opera The Young and the Restless, and also had a bit part in The Warriors. So up there with Merv Griffin in terms of being a whole-brained guy. Needless to say, a soap star hunk dating a game show queen was tabloid gold in the mid-'80s, and their relationship was huge news. But then the single-engine plane Gibson was piloting crashed during its final approach to Van Nuys Airport in 1986, and he was killed right before they were due to be married. His body was burned so badly that they could only identify him through using dental records. After taking a brief leave of absence from Wheel of Fortune, White helped Heigl, thanks to Wheel fans. She told our friends at People magazine, I think it was our friend Jillian Telling actually, I heard from so many people who'd share the same experience of losing someone instantly in an accident, and that really helped me. I didn't feel like I was alone, because when something like that happens, you immediately think you're the only one. She would draw on the strength of fans once again in 1992. By this point, she had married restaurateur George Santopietro, and she was thrilled to announce her pregnancy in the most fitting way possible, a puzzle on Wheel of Fortune that revealed the message, Vanna's pregnant. She would later say, I so wanted to be pregnant and have a baby. So then when I finally got pregnant, I wanted to tell the world immediately. But a week after revealing her pregnancy on the show, she suffered a miscarriage. Obviously, I lost the baby, which is devastating after announcing it. Losing a child, she says, there's nothing good about that. The good news is that I was able to get pregnant again and had 2 beautiful, healthy children. She's the mother to son Nico, born in 1994, and daughter Gigi, born in 1997. Jesus Christ. Well, all that makes this next part a little more understandable. Apparently, Vanna and Pat would throw back quite a few drinks between tapings, at least earlier in their career. This revelation came from Sajak during a 2012 appearance on Dan Le Batard's ESPN2 show, Highly Questionable. Le Batard asked if he'd ever, that's a really hard name to say, asked if he'd ever been drunk while taping the show. And Sajak's response, Vanna and I would have 2 or 3 or 6 drinks and then come and do the last shows and have trouble recognizing the alphabet. I had a great time. I have no idea if the shows were any good, but no one said anything, so I guess I did okay. I seem to remember that this revelation, do you remember this? Like, led to all these headlines that basically compared Wheel of Fortune to, like, Saturday Night Live in the 70s, which is emphatically not true. But remember, this made, like, a lot of news when this came out.
Really?
Yeah. That was, like, my first, like, 2 or 3 years working in the blogosphere. It was the Obama years. Things were a lot calmer then. Celebrities hadn't really figured out Twitter as a place to vent their poorly thought out ideas, and
That's wild, man.
We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more Too Much Information in just a moment.
now we're going to talk about the real star of the show, the Wheel. The famous Wheel of Fortune, you'll remember, weighs 2,400 pounds and is equipped with more than 200 computerized lights, which can turn up to 2 million different colors. I didn't even know there were 2 million different colors. It gets its trademark thudding, ticking sound from 73 stainless steel pins that fly past 3 rubber flippers. And because of the wheel's unexpected heaviness, all contestants are given a practice spin before taping.
Is it made in America?
Oh, most assuredly.
Oh, yeah, I guess with Sajak, yeah.
Yeah. Given all these intricacies, there's only one wheel. Only one wheel and one puzzle board. It's just like Highlander. There can be only one. The wheel and the game board must be broken down and put back together whenever the show goes on the road, which is fairly often. That's got to be a real hassle. The show travels with more than 1 million pounds of equipment to tape in locations all across the country, and these excursions sent them back almost $2 million each time. The show must mint money between transit costs, prize money, Sajak and White's salary. That's nuts.
That's 500 tons.
Yeah,
It's 250 elephants worth of crap. Taylor Swift equipment.
Oh, I like where your head's going.
Taylor it takes 84 trucks to hold the equipment for one set. There's a post of it.
For Taylor Swift?
Yeah, a year ago with all of these trucks lined up end to end. It looks like an Amazon warehouse. This makes the wall of sound look like a Bluetooth speaker. I can't find tonnage, but the Eras Tour had a fleet of 90 trucks that cost $500,000 a week.
That sounds low to me.
She wrote each truck driver a bonus check of $100,000 before the end of the tour.
That's kind of nuts.
Yeah, it says the bonus, because there were 50 drivers associated with the tour, it was about $5 million worth. But, you know, the tour made $1 billion. Oh, here you go. As of 2015, the worldwide freight forwarder for the Taylor Swift tour that year was 635 tons. So suck it, Wheel of Fortune. You don't have as much as Taylor.
But do they have the wheel?
She does not have the wheel, Jordan. But does she have the wheel? You don't understand. This has always been about the wheel. There's nothing else but the wheel.
I'm just like picturing the opening of Raiders of the Lost Ark, but instead of the boulder, it's just the Wheel of Fortune wheel.
Oh, man. Too funny. Am I supposed to be talking?
No. I was waiting for a bigger laugh that never came.
Again, my Twitter bio.
The wheel's co-star is, of course, the puzzle board. There are 4 rows of letters with 12 spots on the top and bottom rows and 14 across the 2 middle rows. The longest puzzle to date, this will interest you, was reportedly she just won a 7th U.S. figure skating championship, which used 47 characters, including spaces. The puzzle with the most characters, not counting spaces, is Hershey Bar Graham Cracker Gooey Roasted Marshmallow with 46 characters. That paid for a move to get that wheel across the country.
What the does that mean?
Hershey Bar Graham Cracker, I don't know. Maybe
None of those words are in the Bible.
I mean, it's a recipe for a s'more, but I don't know why that would have been used. OG wheel fans know that for many years, the game board was manual, with letters that had to be spun around by hand. Hence the reason Vanna White has a job. But then this changed when producer Harry Friedman took over the show in 1995. He was frustrated by the fact that it took an hour to tape a half-hour show, and he soon discovered that this was due to the letterboard having to be reset manually after every puzzle. Eventually, in February 1997, a new electronic board was introduced, which featured 52 touchscreens, helping to shave the recording time down to 30 minutes. But he also executive produced Jeopardy, which was, more in the 30-minute range. So I think he was probably like using that as the yardstick. And then when he retired, they got that Mike Richards guy that created the whole like succession crisis on Jeopardy.
Huh.
Yeah. There's also a smaller screen off camera for Pat Sajak, which indicates how many times a chosen letter appears in the puzzle. That's why he was like, we got 2 B's. He's not like sitting there pointing and counting it out. In the early days of the show.
No, my God. I mean,
for $50 million a year.
Yeah.
Though this is great, though. For the early days of the show, somebody from the production sat off camera and held up fingers to signal to Pat, and they became known as Finger Boys.
Hey-o. Just like at the Vatican.
Okay, I'll move off of that. Sadly, the Finger Boys became a victim of automation, but thankfully, Vanna endures. Nevertheless, she persisted. Contestants have a similar screen out of view that lists all the letters that have been guessed, so they don't have to endure the embarrassment of asking for the same letter twice. And as we will touch on, there are plenty of other ways for contestants to embarrass themselves on this show, but we'll get to that later. Here's a fun fact that doesn't really fit anywhere else. The price of a vowel hasn't been adjusted for inflation over the course of the 40 years of this show. It's still only $250.
Now that's a goddamn bargain.
I know.
That's why I just knocked over my microphone.
Speaking of things that are equal, there's also a platform to ensure that all contestants on this show are the same height.
I'm going to go ahead and say Jack's short, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's why he made a joke about it when he first came on.
No, he's
How tall is he?
5'10", perfectly cromulent height to be. This is according to WLKY in 2015. Sajak said in the early seasons of the show, they put shorter contestants on risers so that they could see over the podium and spin the wheel. But what happened was that it had the effect of making Sajak seem much shorter than he was, because he said I would walk next to a great grandmother on the show, and I would walk next to her, and people thought I was a jockey. So now we are on risers, and when they go up, I go up, and we stay the same size. But it got ingrained in people that I was about 4'3", The other factor in this would be that Vanna White is, of course,
On
5'6"
heels.
and on heels, but he just radiates short guy energy.
Now we have to talk about the necessary evil of Wheel of Fortune, the contestants. Since 1995, the show has been filmed at the Sony Picture Studios in Culver City, California, right next door to the Jeopardy soundstage. And I believe the same soundstage, if I recall correctly, that Wizard of Oz was filmed. So it's hella haunted. Because they share many of the same crew, Wheel has to tape on a different day than Jeopardy. An entire season of Wheel of Fortune is filmed in less than 40 days. They shoot 1 day a week with 5 or 6 shows filmed per day. I like that. More than 10,000 people try out each year to get on the show, but fewer than 600 get selected. To date, over 1 million fans have applied for a chance to be a contestant on the show. To get on Wheel, the first thing you have to do is fill out an online application, which is free to submit. The form must include a short personal video, however, which sounds cringe as hell. The one quality the casting department looks for, of course, is confidence. As per the show's website, it's important that the game show moves along quickly and that the players are decisive in calling out their letters with a strong, confident voice and in choosing their game strategy. Parentheses, whether to spin, buy a vowel, or solve the puzzle. It's all about strategy.
What should I do?
Buy a vowel. It's cheap.
Okay.
They're only going to go up in value.
Yeah, it's true. It's free real estate.
Yes. Verbal real estate. The vetting process for Wheel of Fortune is surprisingly strict. There are a number of criteria that will immediately disqualify a contestant from eligibility. Any person who's previously appeared on any incarnation of the show, even Teen Week, can't be a contestant. Anyone who's appeared on a game show or reality show in the last year or 3 shows in the last 10 years is also ineligible. Also, you can't work for or be related to anyone who has any connection to the show. I think these are all vestiges of the quiz show scandals in the 50s when it became, went all the way to the Senate floor, investigating shows that proved to be rigged. And that was racketeering? What's the official term for that?
How did
It's
they get
fraud. Fraud, I think.
Yeah. Now, racketeering is, I think, wasn't that like a numbers charge? But because it had such strong interstate trafficking penalties, that's how they ended up getting all those guys, like, actually thrown away.
Racketeering is a type of organized crime in which the perpetrator set up a coercive, fraudulent, extortionary, or otherwise illegal coordinated scheme or operation to repeatedly or consistently collect a profit. So it's just a scam. Scamming is a fancy term for scamming, I guess.
Oh, yeah, here it is. The 1970 RICO Act. It means any criminal scheme or operation with ongoing or reoccurring profit. So all of them. Yeah, it was codified in 1970 to come against the mafia. Just so much Italian-American discrimination in this country.
I knew you were going there. Also, there's discrimination against Canadians, at least as far as Wheel of Fortune is concerned.
Well, I mean...
Per the online application, Wheel of Fortune is not currently accepting any contestants from Canada. That must not have sat well with famed Canadian Alex Trebek, sister show host.
I'm trying to think of anything I could say about that, about related to like Rush.
Was there a YYZ joke in there?
YYZ?
I know.
Yes. Let's break these stats down into cold hard cash, though.
Yeah.
Since its syndication debut in 1983, Wheel has awarded more than 200. I love calling it Wheel like it's a proper name.
I know. It's really funny.
Please call me Wheel. My father was Mr. Fortune. Wheel has awarded more than $250 million in cash and prize to its contestants, according to production. The most money ever won during regular gameplay occurred on December 26th, 2014. The lucky contestant was Matt DeSantos. He managed to win a record $91,892 before the bonus round. Amazingly, he guessed one of the first puzzles with just one letter E turned over, and then every puzzle after. He didn't end up winning the bonus round, but his payday was the largest main game win in the show's history. Now, this doesn't include the occasions when the game is played with the $1 million wedge. Since its introduction in 2008, there have been 3 contestants who have hit it big. The first winner, Michelle Lowenstein, won on August 8th, 2008, 888, which incidentally was 1 month and a day after getting married. She won the $1,026,080 prize shortly after returning from her honeymoon, and her final puzzle was Leaky Faucet. I'm not going to make a joke there. She was the biggest payout until May of 2013 when Autumn Earnhardt, that sounds like a Nazi rocket scientist the government hired, took home $1,030,340 after she guessed the phrase tough workout with only 4 letters on the board. See, I think this gets at my heart of like what I don't like about Wheel is how stupid these all are.
Yeah.
It's like the New York Times, it's the inverse of the New York Times crossword where they go out of their way to make in like obnoxiously obtuse homonym or phrasal or idiomatic jokes that just like make you want to strangle Will Shortz. This is just dumb shit. Like a tough workout.
You're right. I mean, and we'll get to that in the section of screw ups on this show, basically, where there are some phrases that are just like that's not a phrase.
Anyway, that was on top of the other 30 grand that Fraulein Earnhardt took home earlier on the show. A year after Autumn in 2014.
From the makers of 500 Days of Summer comes A Year After Autumn.
Math teacher Sarah Manchester rounded out the top 3 with a $1,017,490 in earnings. She won the prize during Wheel of Fortune's Teachers Week with the puzzle Loud Laughter. Stupid. Riotous laughter? That's definitely one thing. Sure. Like, loud. What? On the flip side of all this, we have the most unlucky person to ever win, or to ever play Wheel of Fortune. Obviously, he did not win. His name is James Pewster. That's a weak name. And he appeared on the episode that aired on March 10th, 1998. He was the first person to hit bankrupt on the wheel 4 separate times. He was greeted after the show by the producers, who informed him of this dubious honor. Reportedly, he never watched the game show again after that experience. And indeed, Wheel of Fortune can be a cruel game. For example, the episode that aired on April 9th, 2018, when one unfortunate contestant lost all of the money he'd earned that round by mispronouncing a word. The solution was flamenco dance lessons, but the man pronounced flamenco as flamingo. Well, that's fine. You got the word wrong. That's a different word. That's what that means. Words have meaning. I bet he says supposedly.
Oh, come on, no one says that.
People do. Sajak even promised to review the footage during a commercial break to be sure, but the mispronunciation was clear and he lost it all. This is sad. The mess-ups. But as we mentioned, sometimes the contestants deserve it. Another case in point would be the Indiana University student who participated during one of the college edition episodes. He had every single letter up on the board, and all he had to do was read it aloud to solve the puzzle. The answer was mythological hero Achilles. In an instantly viral moment, he said,
mythological hero Achilles. You can't accept that. Okay.
It was like every syllable on that was wrong.
Mispronounced incorrectly. He did not win. He made similar other boner moves, as you write, in the show as well. Notably guessing on-the-spot dice spin, one word, instead of on-the-spot decision. One of the great delights of watching Wheel of Fortune is indeed to see the chance of some truly hilarious boner moments on television. And Jordan, you know, you've been on a game show. So grading on a curve, how big of boner moments are these, truly?
They're pretty big. I mean, I know I was on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and I'm not a millionaire, so clearly I made a boner move or two myself. But yeah, no, I mean, it's obviously tough. Like, your brain does weird things when you're, you know, in the center of the stage and everyone's looking at you and the lights are on you and the cameras are on you and stuff. But these are pretty bad.
Hit me.
Let's see. One answer was a list of the 7 dwarves, but instead of sneezy, the contestant said sneaky, which I guess when you think about it makes just as much sense as sneezy. During one puzzle, a contestant thought the painted desert was the pointed desert, which isn't so bad, but then they moved on to the next contestant, who I guess wasn't listening, because then he also said the pointed desert.
That's funny.
This is my favorite. One time the answer was self-portrait, and someone said self-potato. The answer was all-you-can-eat taco bar, and the contestant suggested all-you-can-eat tape bar.
Okay.
The answer was magic wand, and the contestant suggested magic jand, Jant, which, no, is not a word.
No, the guy was just from Philly. He was saying Magic John.
The answer was playing a practical joke, and the contestant guessed playing a practical move, which is kind of a great, that's a good phrase. The answer was cell phone charger, and the contestant guessed cell phone charter, like the Magna Carta.
Mm-hmm.
The answer was leather wallet, and the contestant guessed leather mullet, which spiritually makes a certain amount of sense.
I feel like it's always been that way.
Yeah.
The answer was go to the front of the line, and the contestant guessed go to the front of the cave. Was this Play-Doh? The answer was custard-filled chocolate eclair. The contestant guessed mustard-filled chocolate eclair. He must have been from Chicago as well. The answer was wish list, and a contestant guessed fish love. Not touching that one either. Another time the answer was a streetcar named Desire. All that was left to say on the board was the M in named. Instead, the contestant guessed K, which would have yielded the title A Streetcar Naked Desire. Without missing a beat, Sajak attempted to make the guy feel better by saying, I'd rather see your play. That's a good bit. That's Carson-esque.
Yeah.
Kevin was later invited on Ellen, where it was revealed that neither he nor his wife had ever heard of the play and movie, starring two of the most famous actors of all time. Ellen gave him $5,000 in redemption money after playing a game on her show.
And promising to read the goddamn play.
How nice. Why don't you take us home?
Vanna White's favorite fail, which she has frequently cited in interviews for decades, was when the answer was Gone with the Wind and the contestant guessed done with one hand. Unfortunately, capping off all these great fails, I regret to inform you that one of the great myths of Wheel of Fortune is not true. Oh, you should take this. This is more.
Sure. I mean, yeah, let's myth bust.
Yeah, myth bust.
For years, the story has made the rounds, complete with crudely edited photo and video footage of contestants trying to guess the phrase, luck be in the air tonight.
Just not a phrase.
Nope, sure isn't. Instead, a contestant supposedly offers, F me in the ass tonight. Snopes has revealed this to be a fake, which makes sense, because again, luck be in the air tonight is not a phrase. Although that hasn't stopped the puzzle makers at Wheel of Fortune at their cruel game. Just last year, social media was up in arms when a contestant lost out on a new Volkswagen when she failed to guess obtaining my goals, which is not, that's not even the correct use of that word. That's not even coining an idiom that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You can't obtain something that's like an intangible set of moving wants.
Yeah.
These people work for network well, I just said it. These people work for network television. God.
Does what it says in the tin.
Obtaining my goals. That reads like they have ChatGPT doing this by now. That's what that is.
But while Wheel of Fortune has given us some truly rough moments that made us question Darwinism and our faith in humanity, there have been some sweet instances as well. I'm thinking of a woman named Nura Facciano, a former military vet who appeared on the show in 2015. She was completely dominating throughout her episode, racking up $13,970. Nearest competition had like $4,000, and another guy had nothing. Sat at zero. That's when the final spin occurred, and the contestants had one final shot at solving a puzzle and adding to their totals. And it was relatively clear at that point in the game that it would be very difficult for anyone to beat Nura unless they accurately guessed every letter, while Nura failed at guessing any letters or solving the puzzle. So, to kick a couple bucks to this guy who had nothing, she threw the game. Next time around, she guessed the letter Z, one of the least used letters in the alphabet. Pat was so stunned that he asked her to repeat herself, to which Nura confidently replied, Z, as in Zulu. Nura would go on to miss her turn by not replying next time around, guessing the letter Q after that and the letter X after that, and then she would miss her last guess by just saying, And after the final puzzle was solved, Sajak congratulated all the contestants for taking home cash and said to Nura, you called some unusual letters in that last round. And Nura was quick to respond with, well, that's just what I saw. That answer didn't satisfy Pat. And he said, well, that's an unsatisfactory answer, but you're not under oath here, and there's nothing I can do. Nura was the big winner on the show that day. She was solving clues with like only 2 or 3 letters up on the board. So it became clear to most viewers that she threw the final round of the game so the contestant with no money, who also happened to be a fellow veteran, could have a chance to take home some money as well. And I think that's nice.
Yeah, that is nice.
Isn't it?
I wonder if they killed some people together. Where was she stationed?
That's about all I got on Wheel of Fortune. The wheel's going to keep on turning. I think it's back in the fall with Seacrest. Aired over 8,000 episodes, the longest running syndicated game show currently on television. 30 million viewers each week. Can't be wrong.
It sure can't, Jordan. Except for all of the ways we said in which it was. I'm Alex Heigl.
And I'm Jordan Runtagh. We'll catch you next time.
Too Much Information was a production of iHeart Radio.
The show's executive producers are Noel Brown and Jordan Runtagh.
The show's supervising producer is Michael Alder June.
The show was researched, written, and hosted by Jordan Runtagh and Alex Heigl.
With original music by Seth Applebaum and the Ghost Funk Orchestra. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review. For more podcasts on iHeart Radio, visit the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.